The government prepares to issue visas for foreign workers over the lorry driver shortage. As people queue for fuel up and down the country and many pumps run dry, Downing Street says there is ample petrol, but they are looking at a temporary solution.
There's no fuel anywhere. Been to 2 petrol garages today and there's no fuel.
I've passed 4 petrol stations and I can't get any petrol.
Also in news at 10 tonight. Hundreds of people joined Sabina Nessa's family at a vigil to remember her at the place where she was killed.
We are stuck in a bad dream and can't get out of it. Our world is shattered. We have simply lost for words. No family should go through what we are going through.
After 16 years in power, Angela Merkel prepares to step down as the race tightens in Germany's election.
Can you tell me where your old house was?
Somewhere out there.
A special report ahead of the Global Climate Summit on how it's decided which coastal communities to save from erosion. From winning the US Open to a royal partner, Emma and Kate double up in a very friendly tennis match. And
Mumbai, Sydney, London.
Duran on the 24-hour worldwide concert inspired by Live Aid.
We were so optimistic after Live Aid that we had changed the world.
For the streaming age, this is, well, as close to a Live Aid kind of event that you're going to see.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. It's become increasingly clear that in order to avoid a new winter of discontent with shortages of food and fuel, we need more lorry drivers. It seems that tonight, despite the promises of Brexit, the government is preparing to relax the immigration rules and allow foreign workers to fill that void. The situation has become a crisis as up and down the country queues formed at petrol stations and some pumps ran dry. There is ample fuel, the government says, but the problem is getting it to the forecourts. They acknowledge that action is needed to solve the situation, but insist any measures will only be temporary.
This is no longer just a shortage of lorry drivers. This is, to be frank, panic buying. Concerned drivers queuing all the way round this filling station to top up their tanks and in other places their jerry cans. In Hertfordshire, that meant shortages from this morning.
Mate, there's no fuel anywhere. Been to 2 petrol garages today and there's no fuel.
I've passed 4 petrol stations and I can't get any petrol. This is the 4th one on my way home. I've not driven out my way at all.
What do you think of all this queuing?
Absolutely mad. Absolutely mad. But once someone panics, everyone panics.
The root cause is a shortage of lorry drivers, which ministers had wanted to fix with higher wages and quicker driver training. But now they're also gearing up for a U-turn, getting more drivers in from abroad by putting them on a shortage occupations list.
Well, look, I want to move heaven and earth to do everything we possibly can, which is how we've ended up doubling the number of tests available. I'll look at every option, including shortage lists as well.
But how quickly can training new drivers start to solve this problem?
So there are people right now as we speak who are going through their HGV driving tests who will be able to drive immediately. Those are typically people who are returning from the industry, perhaps from a break. There are other people.
Is that in the coming days or is that in the coming weeks?
It's already happening. This is actually happening now. It's been happening this week.
Before you get going, you're going to do your mirror blind spot.
But the biggest change to driver training, skipping one of the stages that must be passed, is unlikely to start until mid-November and will take time to work.
You're looking from start to finish of about 8 weeks until you are able to go out there in cab and go and get your job after doing your training.
So those drivers who start under the new system in perhaps mid-November, they're not going to be ready for at least 2 months after that?
I would say so. You won't be seeing, from the changes from skipping the stage process, you won't be seeing that till realistically after Christmas.
And consumer confidence won't wait that long, with people already worried about filling their tanks when, apparently, there isn't a shortage of fuel.
People shouldn't be panic buying. There's plenty of fuel available.
But if they do start panic buying, that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it will put additional pressure that we don't need at the moment on the supply chain. There's plenty of fuel out there.
But right now, that fuel isn't getting to every forecourt as quickly as worried customers are pumping it out again, leaving petrol stations empty, drivers frustrated, and the government not in control.
Now, to get an assessment of the political and economic implications of all this, Carl is in Westminster and Joel is here. But Carl, to you first. I mean, to say the least, the politics of this is extremely tricky for the government, isn't it?
It is deeply tricky. If the government brings in foreign workers to fix this problem, it appears to undermine one of the fundamental promises of Brexit. If it doesn't bring in those foreign workers, it risks making an already tricky winter even worse. Now, in the last few minutes, Downing Street have released a statement saying that they still intend to build what they call a high-wage economy, but that they are looking at very strictly time-limited temporary measures to address this immediate problem. And I'm told that that is essentially code for allowing in foreign drivers to try and fix this problem. But there is a broader political issue here. There is a bigger picture, which is that if the government allows in lorry drivers to fix this issue, well, then there's a list of staff shortages in a variety of industries, and they will all be knocking on the government's door from, say, the care sector, saying, well, if you can allow in lorry drivers to fix their problem, why can't you let in care workers to fix ours?
Carl, Joel, that touches on the wider problem, isn't it? You start with lorry drivers, but this affects the entire supply chain across whole industries, isn't it?
It does. And look, the government will tell you, Rageh, that it makes decisions on the basis of data, statistics, evidence, proof, not the front pages of the newspapers. But it is very interesting that the government has suddenly decided that it is actually, after all, quite a good idea to bring in HGV drivers from abroad on the day that there was panic at the pumps. Tonight, EG Group, which operates around 400 forecourts in the UK, has decided to impose a cap of £30 on petrol and diesel sales. It's trying to calm things down. For 3 months, Rageh, businesses have been telling ministers very clearly supply lines are overstretched. We need to be able to recruit from abroad. Logistics UK wants 10,000 temporary visas. Tesco doesn't think that will touch the sides. We don't know how many visas they'll get, how long they'll last, and indeed if there is this army of foreign recruits who are willing to come and work in the UK. We do need a solution, though. Warburton's is the latest company tonight to admit it's struggling to keep the shops and the supermarkets supplied with bread and bakery products. It has 160 driver vacancies. It's worried, Rageh, that as demand surges in the run-up to Christmas, it will not be able to cope, and it's not alone.
A tip of an iceberg. Thanks very much indeed, Joel, here in the studio, and to Carl in Westminster. Thank you both. Now, around 500 people gathered at a vigil in South London tonight to mourn Sabina Nessa, the primary school teacher murdered while on her way to meet a friend. Her sister told those attending no family should go through this. Candles were lit in her memory and flowers left, including some on behalf of the Duchess of Cambridge. Meanwhile, police are still searching for a man seen in CCTV footage whom they want to speak to.
Minutes from his murder, this was Ollie Stevens caught on CCTV as he went to meet a girl near his home. Little did he know he was walking into an ambush by his peers. Two boys, both now 40.
Apologies, that's not the right piece, but I think we do have the right piece now. Thank you.
As darkness fell, Pegler Square lit up with hundreds of candles. Each one a small act of remembrance for a woman who was murdered on the short walk here from her home. Sabina Nessa's family held each other's hands as they made their way to the front. Her sister somehow found the strength to speak to the crowd.
My parents have lost their daughter, and my girls have lost such a brilliant, loving, caring auntie who dearly loved her. Words cannot describe how we are feeling. This feels like we are stuck in a bad dream and can't get out of it. Our world is shattered. We have simply lost for words. No family should go through what we are going through.
Sabina Nessa was murdered 1 week ago as she made the short walk through her local park to meet a friend at the pub. She never made it to Pegler Square, but police want to speak to a man who was seen there on the night she was attacked. This CCTV footage shows him walking through the square, a few hundred yards from the park where Sabina's body was found. Police want to trace both him and this silver car, which they believe he had access to. Another man that was arrested on suspicion of murder has today been released under investigation. Tonight, forensics officers continued their work as one half of Pegler Square became a crime scene. The hundreds of people in the other half were focused on remembering Sabina's life. A lot of people I've spoken to around here over the past week have told me they felt scared to leave the house, but tonight this square is packed with people and there is a real sense of solidarity.
Most of us were strangers and it felt like we knew her just because of how the community came together.
It's somewhat comforting to see the people that have come, like I've heard all across London.
Tonight was about this community coming together to remember a woman who was murdered as she walked here alone. Chloe Keedy, News at 10.
Now, another family spoke today of how they are reeling from a murder so callous and calculated it almost defies belief. Their 13-year-old autistic son, Ollie Stevens, was lured to a park after a dispute on social media, where he was stabbed to death. Two boys, now both aged 14, were given life sentences for murder today, while the girl who coaxed him to the fatal meeting was also put behind bars.
Minutes from his murder, this was Ollie Stevens caught on CCTV as he went to meet a girl near his home. Little did he know he was walking into an ambush by his peers. Two boys, both now 14, were waiting in these fields, one with a knife ready to stab him over an argument which had played out on social media. Ollie was just 13 years old and autistic. His parents were among the first on the scene after the stabbing.
I remember when I got there, Stuart just fell to his knees and he just was screaming, my boy, no. And he screamed that. And I looked over and Ollie was just completely lifeless.
The horror was just written all over their faces because they'd seen him grow up. Everybody that was on that field that day knew Ollie. They'd seen him grow up. They'd seen him do his wheelies up and down the street time and time again. Friends lived around the corner. The parents of the friends, they all knew him.
One of the killers had posted social media videos brandishing knives. Today, he and the other boy, who are both too young to be named, were given life sentences and will serve at least 12 and 13 years respectively. The girl Ollie met, who knew about the planned attack, was sentenced to 3 years and 2 months.
Sadly, this case is not the exception. Social media is featuring far too frequently in incidents of murder and serious violence in this country. But the sharing of violent and weapon-related content, particularly by children, also needs to be a priority for these companies.
Emotionally drained after watching the sentencing, Ollie Stevens' parents today delivered a clear message about the dangers of a toxic knife culture on social media.
There is a cancer in our children's lives. It starts with the use of a mobile phone, with apps that are provided to entertain, yet are misused to spread slander, hatred, misinformation and bile, and ends in the cold, cruel-blooded murder.
In a powerful moment before the sentences were handed down, Ollie's father read out an impact statement which left many in court in tears. In it, he said, "We as a family hold all three of you equally accountable for his death. There will be no forgiveness from us, ever." He went on to describe Ollie's murder as nothing short of an execution. Dan Rivers, News at 10 at Reading Crown Court.
Whoever emerges from Sunday's election in Germany as its first new chancellor for 16 years will usher in a new political era, not just in that country, but in Europe and on the global stage. The person who succeeds Angela Merkel will inherit the legacy of her time in office as the leader who shaped modern Germany and, by many people's estimation, the single most dominant European political figure. Mrs. Merkel was at a big rally in Munich today trying to shore up the campaign of the politician who now heads her party.
It was once said that all political careers end in failure. Angela Merkel is proving herself the exception, bowing out with an 80% approval rating. If she were running for a fifth term, she'd most probably win. But she isn't. And the man on the right, Armin Laschet, who hopes to succeed her, quite likely won't. She's doing what she can for him in these final days. This is about Germany, she said. Germany has to remain stable. And this is why Armin Laschet must become Chancellor. But observers point out she has spent too much of this election on photo ops like this one yesterday, a slow Auf Wiedersehen rather than hard campaigning. This does seem to be the hardest thing for even the most successful politicians, putting in place a potential successor.
She hasn't just found it difficult. Once the CDU-CSU had decided on a successor, she didn't really lift a finger for him. It's only really been in the very last days of the campaign that she showed some active support for her successor, and I would have thought that's a bit of a failure of leadership, really.
But if her departure's a blemish, historians are likely to be kind about the preceding 16 years. Elected back in 2005, the first woman ever to become Chancellor of Germany, she rose from virtual obscurity outside the country's borders to become the essential European politician. In partnership with successive French presidents, she led the successful efforts to save the euro, then astonished the continent by offering a welcome and a home to more than 1 million refugees. She showed less generosity to David Cameron, who had banked on her doing a deal to help him win the Brexit referendum. She never delivered. Whether she can deliver her country to this man, Armin Laschet, we will find out on Sunday. His supporters have picked up a familiar chant from across the North Sea, but that never won an election either.
Vielen Dank, Angela Merkel, für alles das.
He thanks Merkel for her 16 years, and while the polls suggest he is closing the gap, it remains likely that post-Merkel, Germany will choose to head off in a new direction.
And James is in Munich. James, as you said, the essential European politician. But just how big an election is this? Not just in Germany, but in Europe.
Oh, Europe's taking tremendous interest in it, not actually so much in who's going to win, because there isn't that much difference, to be honest, between Armin Laschet and Olaf Scholz. What they're more interested in is what sort of government Germany is going to have by the time this election's over. Is it going to be, as the polls suggest actually, a very fragile coalition potentially riven by internal rivalries, or the sort of strong coalition government that Angela Merkel was able to lead? And that whole process doesn't start till Monday morning. And don't forget that while we're all saying goodbye to Angela Merkel this weekend, and there are all sorts of retrospectives of her time in office, she is going to hang on as Chancellor for weeks, possibly months, because under German rules, you don't get to have a new government, a new Chancellor, until the coalition process is over. In the meantime, of course, Europe's decisions have to be taken about, so far, fragile economic recovery, about relations with the US. President Macron is in Paris saying, I know what to do, allons-y, let's follow me. But the reality is Europe won't follow France. It takes France and Germany operating together and going in the same direction to give a lead to the EU. And it's not at all clear we're going to have that anytime soon.
We'll see you soon. James in Munich, thank you very much indeed. Now, tonight we have the first in a special series of reports in the run-up to the Glasgow Climate Summit on how global warming is affecting our lives here in Britain. Activists say the gathering of world leaders in little more than a month is the most urgent there's ever been, with the planet standing on the brink of environmental catastrophe. And the danger signs are here for all to see right now in the UK. For the opening report in our series, Last Chance to Save the Planet, we look at how repeated flooding and increasing erosion around the British coastline provide a dramatic illustration of the drastic consequences of climate change.
When it comes to climate change, this is Britain's front line.
It's changing day by day. Things are getting worse.
Where rising sea levels threaten the Norfolk coast.
I'm an eco-refugee. I'm going to lose my house.
There are now fears that entire villages could fall into the sea.
I'm 76, so I don't know whether I'll go before my house does.
It's already happening in Haysborough, where neighbours Bryony and Nicola know they could be next, as the walk from their homes to the cliff edge gets shorter every day.
Can you tell me where your old house was?
Somewhere out there.
Out here, and now the cliff edge is creeping up on her again.
Can you feel it when the cliff starts to go?
Yes, you can feel a tremor in the house.
And what is worrying is not just us, it's the next generation.
In the future, if I have children and things like that, I won't be able to bring them to where I grew up, whereas like my mum take me to where she used to live, which is inland.
This coast has been eroding for hundreds of years, but experts say global warming is now accelerating the threat.
Really, the effects of climate change are going to become extremely strong in the coming decades as the rates of sea level rise increase quite dramatically.
Even if we manage to limit global warming, rising sea levels are going to continue to threaten our coastlines, with difficult decisions already being made about which communities are deemed worthy of saving and which will be relocated or abandoned. How to deal with coastal communities in England and Wales is recommended in 22 shoreline management plans. These documents place each section of coast into one of 4 categories. The 2 key ones are to hold the line and protect the local community, or to let the coast retreat in what is known as managed realignment. That decision is ultimately based on whether an economic and environmental case can be made in favour of expensive sea defences or coast protection. Authorities haven't been able to make that case for the village of Haysborough or further down the coast in Hemsby. Here, Lance Martin's bungalow is the last property standing on the coastal edge after extreme weather in 2018 caused the council to demolish an entire strip. With help, Lance dragged his home back 10 metres to save it.
We've been working down here Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and you can see the results.
Then he built his own protections. It's difficult for people like Lance to see other areas defended and theirs not. But experts say difficult decisions have to be taken.
We can't afford to protect everywhere. There have been some unwise decisions made in the past about where development takes place, many of them inadvertently. Now we're seeing the science of climate change. We're recognising that that's just not sustainable in the future.
You spent 10 years on the Climate Change Committee advising the government about the risks to our coast. What were you warning them?
So we've been warning that the risks of climate change on the coast are not being properly attended to.
In other lower-lying coastal areas like Looe in Cornwall, flooding is the threat, around 12 times a year and affecting hundreds of properties. So authorities have decided to hold the line with a proposed tidal barrier that is the talk of the town.
We're literally on the front line as a point of the water is 100 yards that way. So anything that we can do to help that, absolutely fantastic, get these barriers in.
So solutions are out there if the money can be found, which is why Bryony and Nicola are now fundraising themselves. But they know time, like the rocks beneath them, is slipping away. Anushka Astana, News at 10, Norfolk.
Legal documents in the United States confirmed tonight that Prince Andrew has been served with court papers relating to the sexual assault claim being made against him. Prince Andrew's legal team was officially notified on Tuesday about the civil case brought by Virginia Giuffre, who is suing him for damages over an allegation he assaulted her when she was just 17 years old. The prince, who has until October the 29th to respond, denies the claims against him. It's still remarkable 2 weeks on from her victory to consider the calm way Britain's teenage tennis superstar Emma Raducanu swept to the US Open title. It was a different matter today, though, playing tennis with the Duchess of Cambridge, which she said actually made her very nervous. Meanwhile, the realities of competitive sport intruded a little on the fairy tale when she announced the split from her coach.
Newly crowned as the US Open Women's Champion, Emma Raducanu was trying her hand at doubles today, pairing up with the Duchess of Cambridge, herself a huge tennis fan, patron of the Lawn Tennis Association, and according to Raducanu, pretty handy with a racket too.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, her forehand was incredible, so I was very, very impressed, and it was a lot of fun to play tennis with the Duchess and the other winners too.
It looked like it was getting quite competitive out there.
We were definitely ramping it up after the short warm-up, and everyone has definitely got the competitiveness in them.
Kate looked comfortable on court, holding her own as Emma and Britain's other Grand Slam champions, Joe Salisbury, Alfie Hewitt and Gordon Reid, joined in the practice session. And as play continued, 18-year-old Emma, who spent the last few weeks firmly in the spotlight, decided to tick off another of her lifelong ambitions.
I always wanted to be a ball girl. Yeah, women a ball girl was my dream.
But while tennis with the Duchess is just one of the ways her life has changed since becoming Britain's first female Grand Slam winner in 44 years, Emma's focus is firmly on her game.
I'm just trying to adjust because I'm quite busy and playing and now, but my priority is training. Like, I had a full day training yesterday and I was absolutely loving it. That's exactly where I want to be, and everything, all the opportunities I receive are extremely cool, but where I really want to be and where my head is at is on the tennis court.
Just 2 weeks after Raducanu won the US Open, she's looking for a new, experienced mentor after parting ways with the coach who guided her to her sensational victory. Now ranked 22 in the world and rubbing shoulders with Roy's British tennis star. Martha Fairley, News at 10 at the National Tennis Centre.
The dream has indeed only just begun. Finally, a huge music event starts tomorrow night, broadcast live on TV, radio and social media across all 7 of the world's continents. What's being billed as the Live Aid for the streaming age has some ambitious aims. Not to raise money, but to raise awareness of issues like global poverty, climate change and vaccine equality across the world. On the glittering bill of Global Citizen Live are many of the world's biggest stars, such as Sir Elton John, Ed Sheeran, Jennifer Lopez, Kylie Minogue and Duran Duran, veterans of the original Live Aid, who spoke exclusively to us.
Mumbai, Sydney, London.
Billed as a once-in-a-generation event in its scope, with performances and speeches from all 7 continents, broadcast on TV, radio and social media, Global Citizen Live has some ambitious aims. On poverty, climate change and access to a COVID vaccine for everyone, the audience is asked to join the online movement to pressure their leaders to act. Duran Duran took part in the Live Aid fundraiser 36 years ago. They are in the lineup tomorrow.
We were so optimistic after Live Aid that we had changed the world. And we realised that what started off as a really great intention slowly seemed to have diminished in people's minds. So people forget about it.
For the streaming age, this is, well, as close to a Live Aid kind of event that you're going to see, because all parts of the globe are being
staged a concert earlier this year in support of global vaccination and say it raised more than £200 million. Prince Harry, who spoke at that event, and the Duchess of Sussex are now in New York preparing to join tomorrow's 24-hour broadcast. The audience watching will not be asked to pledge money.
Global Citizen Live is about mobilising people to take action. We don't want your money. We want you to download the Global Citizen app and start taking action, calling on world leaders to make the sort of massive pledges needed to address these issues systemically.
Duran Duran's new single, Tonight United, is the theme song for tomorrow's global event. Live Aid did make a difference, they say. Music can do it again.
I think it's really important to acknowledge the fact that something like Global Citizen wouldn't exist had Live Aid and Band Aid not happened in the first place.
We're entertainers. Let's get together, tune in, have a sing along, have a dance, have a good time. And you're going to get caught, and you're going to get caught up in the spirit of the thing almost by accident.
An event that uses music's biggest voices to encourage the audience to use theirs. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
And that's all from us this evening. Have a great weekend. From all of us, good night.